There's people that will say, when we eat cholesterol that's in protein, that it doesn't raise serum cholesterol, because dietary cholesterol, Nick, and serum cholesterol are two different things. But that is not the truth. 30% of the population, we've talked about this before, are what's called hyperabsorber. I actually am one of them. I can actually eat grilled chicken breast, lean chicken breast. When we talk about dietary strategies that will raise your cholesterol, which I don't think anybody wants to do, and to lower it, a lot of doctors don't know about it, and they're not testing it for it, even if they know, because they don't want to freak their clients out or their patients, because it's like, hey, you got this thing inside you.
And I can't help you.
That you can't do anything about. No dietary change, no lifestyle change is really gonna.
And remember, don't be stressed out. Cholesterol. This is something that everybody needs to pay attention to, whether you have high, low, or perfect cholesterol. This is something we all need to be looking out for. We should be doing our blood work. We should be tracking these markers in our blood work. And this is something that I've done recently. I do have slightly high LDL, and I just thought it was a great topic for an episode, because I'm sure a lot of our audience has slight abnormalities in some of their blood work. And I'm sure this is something you've seen throughout the years.
Yeah, dude, I come from my mom, both sides of my family, but my grandmother's side, we have what's called hyperlipidemia, where we can get really, really high cholesterol. My grandmother had 5 and change. That's pretty high. And if yours truly doesn't do the right thing, if I don't dot every I and cross every T, my LDL does go out of range pretty significantly.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's something that everybody needs to be paying attention to. And today I just wanted to talk about, obviously, what cholesterol is, because people may or may not know that. Different ways that they can adjust that cholesterol based on lifestyle factors. Ways to, strength training and cardio, how that affects people's cholesterol. Different dietary changes that people can make. And, just give people the tools that they need to understand what's going on inside their body and to make the necessary changes to stay healthy and live a long time.
Right. There's a lot of debate about cholesterol, Nick. Some people say elevated cholesterol is not a problem. Some people go as far as saying that elevated cholesterol, in particular LDL, is protective and it's going to make us live a long, healthy life. There's been a lot of change in the medical community as far as, because when we think about cholesterol, where do we go? We go to heart disease, right? The number one killer.
Yeah.
So at one point, when statins were developed and all these other drugs that we'll talk about, in fact, we have Dr. Kumar scheduled to come in and talk about cholesterol medications, the pros and cons for people that may be thinking about it or want to come off. So we have her coming in.
Oh, that's great. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but there's a lot of doctors coming out now saying an LDL, or the cholesterol, because that's what we're really getting into, right? People will say LDL is the bad cholesterol and HDL is the good cholesterol.
Yeah.
Now there's doctors coming out and saying, hey, listen, it's not the only thing you should pay attention to. It's a marker. And there's some people saying, no, this is not accurate. We don't have to be watching these things. It's a push to sell more drugs. And statins, because that's going to be the biggest prescribed drug, Nick, they're generic. Now, they're still making a lot of money, but I don't think that all the doctors are in with the pharmaceutical companies pushing statins. So, again, it's a debated topic. There'll be people that will leave comments and say, cholesterol is not a thing. I personally, not being a doctor, you not being a doctor, I'm rolling the dice of I try to control my cholesterol. That's where I am today, So, yeah, and we'll talk about ways that we can try our best to manage them.
Now, cholesterol, it's essentially like a waxy fat that your body uses as a building material.
Yes,
right?
That's our liver makes cholesterol.
Right, because you're ingesting cholesterol with food, but your body also makes it to make sure that it has enough to survive, right? Without cholesterol, you're going to die.
You're dead. Yeah. It's great that you brought that up, because there's a lot of people, especially in the high protein, keto, carnivore, they'll say, if cholesterol was bad, why would our bodies make it? Well, a heart rate that's too low is no good, and a heart rate that's too high is no good.
Right.
We could say that about blood pressure. If your blood pressure is really high, that's not good. And if your blood pressure is super low, you're going to pass out. So moderation in life is usually like the middle of the road is probably the best course for most things in life.
Yeah.
So dietary cholesterol, because there's people that will say, when we eat cholesterol that's in protein, that it doesn't raise serum cholesterol, because dietary cholesterol, Nick, and serum cholesterol are two different things. But that is not the truth. 30% of the population, we've talked about this before, what's called hyperabsorber. I actually am one of them. I can actually eat grilled chicken breast, lean chicken breast. And we're going to talk about dietary strategies that will raise your cholesterol, which I don't think anybody wants to do, and to lower it. But if you take like a lean piece of meat with no saturated fat or anything, because that's going to be your biggest driver of LDL, is saturated fat.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people that the dietary cholesterol, being driven in lipid cholesterol, raises their blood markers, and the blood cholesterol goes up. I am one of those people. So I have to be very mindful in the protein that I ingest. So they are different, and people can get the two confused. Protein is going to be, or animal foods are going to be the food stuff. That's actually the technical term, food stuff that has cholesterol in it. But then we have our blood or serum cholesterol. They're two different things.
Mm-hmm. We mentioned there's LDL and HDL. The LDL is what's taking the cholesterol around your body from your liver to the rest of the parts of your body, I believe.
Correct.
And then the HDL is what's getting rid of it.
Yeah.
So that's why I guess they say if the HDL is the good one, because it's getting rid of the buildup in your bloodstream.
Yeah. So, and again, we're not doctors.
Of course not.
And you know what, though? Even in the doctors, Nick, there's a lot of doctors debating this topic. So, but, the HDL is supposed to be cardiovascular protective.
Mm-hmm.
So now there was a push for a while, especially with fats, monounsaturated fats, and even some saturated fats, to raise the HDL, that it could protect the heart. Studies are now coming out that if you have a naturally high HDL, because some people have a naturally high HDL, that could be keyword, cardiovascular protective. But intentionally raising your HDL doesn't seem to give you any sort of cardiovascular protection.
So you can have a natural benefit, but you can't force it. You can't just create that the good HDL increase in your blood.
Right, because a lot of times when people adopt a high protein, low carbohydrate diet where there's a lot of animal protein and saturated fat cooking oils that we talked about before this topic, right, Nick? I gave you a little scolding on some of the fats that you're using.
You did.
Right? So what they'll say is my HDL, because when your LDL rises, Nick, most of the time, and then if it doesn't, then you're really in a problem. When the LDL goes up, usually if somebody's exercising and eating a decent diet, the HDL will go up as well. And they'll say, oh, it's okay that my LDL went up because my HDL went up also. No, because you're raising the HDL. It's not a natural thing in your body. It's not most cardiologists that I know that I've worked with, my own cardiologist says, no, the HDL raising it is not cardioprotective. So it's a fool's game to think that your HDL is high. So now you don't have to worry about that LDL cholesterol.
We talked about this a little bit, but there's blood cholesterol and then there's dietary cholesterol. So can you explain the difference there?
Sure. So in animal protein, okay, you're going to have, when you look at the back of a panel of a chicken breast or a steak, you're going to see two things that will raise your cholesterol is saturated fat.
Yeah.
And that can even be in plant fats like avocado and coconut oil and palm oil. They're very high in saturated fat. That will be the biggest culprit in raising the LDL, the quote unquote bad cholesterol.
Yeah.
Then you look at saturated fat that would be in chicken breast and chicken thighs and steak and fatty cuts of steak. Even the lean forms do have some saturates.
Sure.
Those raise the LDL. But then if you look on only animal products, you will see dietary cholesterol. Now, in 70% of the population, Nick, that dietary cholesterol will go in and most people will poop it out. It has about a 10 to 20% likelihood of maybe raising the total serum cholesterol, your blood. When I say serum, I mean blood.
Okay.
It's a small amount. It's 10%, 20%. And most people, especially if they're eating enough fiber, they'll soak it up and pass it out the toilet. But again, to mention, like I said before, there's 30% of the population that hyperabsorb that dietary cholesterol and turn it into serum cholesterol, which really can make somebody's LDL extraordinarily high. And this is a problem. So when you see people be like, oh, eggs don't raise cholesterol in 70% of the people, in 70% of the population, because the egg yolk is loaded with cholesterol. I think, don't hang me out to dry on the numbers, but I think it's like 270 milligrams of cholesterol in one egg yolk, where like 6 ounces of chicken breast probably has around 62. So
that's significant.
If you're a hyperabsorber like myself, eating this type of food, even though you're lean and you're building muscle and your blood sugars are good, that's why some people do get this huge increase, because they're soaking up the dietary cholesterol as well. So, but the good news for 70% of the population is that you'll just poop out that cholesterol that's in that chicken breast, cod or shrimp,
Sure.
steak, turkey, buffalo, bison, whatever you're eating.
When your liver is functioning properly, it's varying how much cholesterol it's producing based on how much you're ingesting. I would assume.
That's correct. So in the 90s, there was a big push to go on a low-fat diet and to reduce cholesterol, because they really kind of, I don't know exactly when this happened, but they, all this science evolves, and they realized that we should be monitoring our cholesterol. And everybody was cutting down on those foods, and we saw a big drop in the cholesterol in people's blood work. But then we saw an uptick in the cholesterol, because what happened was everybody stopped eating dietary cholesterol and their liver started to manufacture more. You can see this in some people too, is the more dietary cholesterol it's very confusing. The less dietary cholesterol, then their liver makes less. Because
you're saying the more dietary cholesterol, then the liver makes less dietary cholesterol.
Thank you. Yeah, it gets a little confusing, but your liver is making cholesterol every single day, and it goes hand in hand with what you're putting in your mouth for 70% of the population. If you eat more dietary cholesterol, Nick, your liver will make less. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, just so it's said, I want people to know that just because your cholesterol is good does not mean you're free and clear of heart disease. Like, there are a lot of factors that go into it. This is just one of the things people should be paying attention to if they're trying to create a healthy heart.
Correct. And now more and more doctors are speaking about that, because you go back like 8 years ago, 9 years ago, a lot of doctors were just focusing on the cholesterol. They weren't focusing on all the other factors like blood sugar and hemoglobin A1C. And when those markers are out of whack, that can make the cholesterol in your body glycated or sticky. So you don't really want, because the cholesterol is there for a reason, Nick.
Yeah, like we said before.
But you don't want that cholesterol. You want that cholesterol, again, personal trainer level. You want that cholesterol to be nice and slippery and just kind of flow through your body and do what it needs to do, because it's important for your hair, your nails, your skin, your sex hormones, your testosterone, estrogen, all these things. When the problem becomes when the cholesterol becomes sticky and glycated, and now it starts to stick itself to the arterial walls and things start to close in. So
You don't
yeah,
want that.
you, you do not want that, Nick. So you're right. The cholesterol is one marker. I believe, and the people I know believe it's a major marker, but you wouldn't want to lower your cholesterol and avoid fasted insulin levels and high blood sugars and high A1C and high blood pressure. They're all markers of the number one killer, heart disease.
Genetics plays a big factor in all of this,
It
but
does.
that is not the only factor. People do have some agency here, right? The amount of sleep you're getting, the amount of exercise you're getting, the amount of stress that you
Yep.
have in your life, all of these things, your diet, all of these things play a big role in determining, your levels of cholesterol and where those markers are. And those are things that people do have control of. Of course, you don't have control of who your parents are, but you do have control of what you're doing during the week. You have control of what you're putting in your body. You have control of how much exercise you're doing. Stress can be harder to manage, but we have done episodes on that in the past and will likely do more in the future. But people need to realize that they have some control over these markers.
They do, except one. And I've been speaking about this for about 3 years now, and everybody out there, you'll know this name probably in about 4 or 5 years. I've mentioned this before, Nick. Trainers, nutritionists, doctors in the know that are obsessed with this stuff, they're usually 8 to 10 years above and ahead of the general population. There is one marker, and a lot of doctors don't either know about it, even some cardiologists don't know about it, but they're not testing it for it because they don't want to freak people out, because currently there's nothing you can do. Diet, lifestyle, it's a marker called lipoprotein little a. Okay, so when we look at the quote unquote bad cholesterols, we have LDL.
Yeah.
We have what's called ApoB. Now, when you lower LDL, ApoB will come down with it. But then there's a little bastard, and mine's really high. It's called lipoprotein little a. You only have to test for it once because it's passed down. It's genetic.
Oh.
You can lose weight. You can become rail thin, become a vegan, do everything you want, and it doesn't really change. Now, I'm blessed. Thank you, Mom. My dad is passed, but thank you, Dad. I have what's called homozygous, meaning my parents never got tested because this test was not around. Mine is exceptionally high, which means I have a time bomb in me. Okay. Mine is, so if it's over 75, you should be concerned. I have a 225. So now
Which equals what? Like, what is the outcome of having?
So basically, I can only speak it on a personal trainer level. It's kind of like thinking about so you think about LDL particles, right? Like these little BBs.
Yeah.
The lipoprotein little a, from what I've read and I've listened to some lipidologists, it's like you have these little BBs that are made out of Velcro, and they're sticky as and they stick to the arterial wall. And right now they're working on medications to lower this down, is in like the second phase, I think. But how it works with these medications, they have to make sure it's okay, that it's safe, but then they have to figure out, well, okay, we know that it's safe and we know it lowers this marker, but does it actually cut down on heart disease or
Right.
heart attacks or, strokes and stuff like that? So a lot of doctors don't know about it, and they're not testing it for it, even if they know, because they don't want to freak their clients out or their patients, because it's like, hey, you got this thing inside you
And I can't help you.
that you can't do anything about. No dietary change, no lifestyle change is really going to
And remember, don't be stressed out. It's not good for your heart, but you're probably going to die soon.
Right.
Good luck with that.
So here's right, Nick. So here's the takeaway that I have read and listened to and believe in myself is you should get the lipoprotein little a checked. You should get it tested. Everybody should get it tested. And if it is elevated, there's a lot of other markers that you can control for. The ApoB, the LDL, the blood pressure, the triglycerides, the body weight, the blood pressure. Did I say blood pressure already? So if you have all those factors taken care of, and you have this ApoB or lipoprotein little a that you can't control, at least you know that you're controlling all the other factors in this bastard until they come up with something.
Right.
But if you have a lipoprotein little a that's elevated and you got your blood work, and congratulations, Nick, you don't have it, and you have some of these other markers, these are the stories we hear about of what happened to Joe. What happened to Joe? They died when they were 47 years old. They had a heart attack because you can't see lipoprotein little a. You can't see it. It doesn't make you look obese. It doesn't make you look like you're sweating when it's cold outside. It's a demon that you can't see. So those are the LDLs or the bad cholesterol markers, Nick. It's the lipoprotein little a, ApoB, and of course, everybody basically knows, unless they live under a rock, LDL.
Right. Okay, so we're going to shift gears a little bit and let's talk about some things we can do that we have control over. Strength training. Now, if this is your first time watching the LynchFit podcast, perhaps you don't know, but we are advocates of strength training. How does strength training affect cholesterol? It's my understanding that it can actually raise your HDL a little bit.
Very good, Nick. You know, it's funny, and this is why I love you, because you know more than certain doctors. I'm going to tell you a quick story. Bob, shout out to you. One of my clients been working with me for a long period of time. Guy's going to turn 70 years old. We're going to have him on the podcast as well.
Great.
He's like me, man. All his markers, guy's 70 years old, his testosterone's high, but that's stubborn LDL. So we made a decision together to shit can his doctor because his doctor obviously didn't stay up with the science. So Bob's in great shape. He's got veins running down his biceps. He's in phenomenal shape. Exercises every day, comes to me, does cardio, plays tennis, plays golf. This guy's like the picture of health. Goes in for his checkup. This is probably like 6-7 years ago. And the guy's like, oh, your LDL's out of whack. And he says, I want you to exercise more. And he came in, he's like, oh, exercise more. In his head, he was being respectful to the doctor. He's like,
Sure.
I exercise like 30 to 60 minutes every day. This guy's a 7-day-a-week kind of guy. He's at the ideal body weight. So he comes in and he says, no, I never want to, I stay in my lane the best I can, because I'm just a trainer, right? He's like, the doctor says I should exercise more, Mike. I'm like, fire that doctor. And he goes, what? I'm like, fire that doctor. Exercise, to your point, Nick, exercise does not lower LDL. Period. I don't care what trainer, nutritionist, fire them if they told you, because they don't know what they're talking about either. However, weight loss, Nick, lowers LDL. About a point for every pound.
Oh.
So when people start exercising and their LDL goes down 50 points, they're like, oh, exercise lowered my cholesterol. And now, you know, I'm a big advocate of, I don't want to talk people out of exercising, but it wasn't the exercise that brought down the LDL, and you said it the right way. It will, high intensity training and cardiovascular will raise HDL, but it doesn't lower LDL at all. But weight loss does.
Right.
So people that,
which is the byproduct of the strength.
Yeah. So people that are confused and don't know what they're talking about and no lipid metabolism will say, oh, I started working out. You need to work out. I lowered my LDL by 40 points. It wasn't the exercise that lowered the LDL. I wish it was, because it would make business even better. It was the 40 pounds that they lost. It's about a pound for every pound, a point for every pound lost. But to your point, HDL, if you want to like, again, raise the HDL, the jury's out whether that's protective. High intensity strength training and cardio will raise the HDL, but do nothing for the LDL.
Now, does it change the shape or the consistency of the LDL? Because some people think that, you know, it can, the LDL, the shape of the LDL is important in terms of how dangerous that LDL is, right?
It's not so much the shape, Nick, it's the size.
Okay.
Right? So you have large, buoyant, it's called pattern A and pattern B. You have small little LDLs, and you have large, fluffy, buoyant, like cotton balls.
Okay.
The theory, and again, debates on cardiologists and lipidologists way above our pay grade, is that the little guys, there's no debate that the little guys, the little BB guys, don't get into the arterial wall and stick easily. okay? They penetrate very easily. No one's debating that. There's some
Sorry, the
thought
little ones, the little BBs do penetrate the
they
wall?
do. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, they do penetrate. No one argues that.
Okay.
There's some argument that these large, fluffy, buoyant ones just kind of poof, pounce off the walls and float around and do what they need.
Okay.
Some cardiologists, especially the ones I know, are saying, no, they don't stick as well, but they still do stick.
Okay.
Okay. So,
All right, so we need to have a cardiologist in. Maybe we can do a little bit of a deeper dive into that at some other point. There are different sizes of LDL, and potentially the larger, fluffier ones could be slightly less dangerous than the smaller BB-looking ones.
correct. But what really determines that is more of the diet, Nick, not the training. Now, I'm not saying that exercise can't change where you're have more large buoyant ones, but a processed carbohydrate diet, lots of white rice and breads and pastas, does have a predisposition or make the LDL those small BB ones. Okay.
Okay.
So it's from my knowledge of the trainer, it's the type of carbohydrates that you're ingesting that will dictate, do you have a lot of small BB ones in there? And no one is debating that. So you don't want that. So processed carbohydrates and lots of sugars and stuff like that, we definitely don't want that. So
Cardio-wise, how is that affecting our cholesterol? Same
Yeah.
ways as the strength training?
yeah. So cardio, you have and again, if you haven't seen our cardio videos, you need to go see those. We have our slow, steady state, and then we have our high intensity.
Mhm.
High intensity is going to be more in the ballpark, Nick, of strength training. And that can really, studies show that can raise the HDL. They're both cardiovascular protective. And again, they're ultimately the biggest thing that the cardio is going to do, besides the functioning of the heart and blood flow and stuff like that, is going to bring you closer to an ideal body weight. And that is important for every single marker. And if you have 50 pounds to lose, doing cardio is a tool to get you there. And it's going to be the weight loss from an LDL standpoint.
Sure.
It's going to be the weight loss and the reduction of body fat, right? Because if somebody is under-muscled and they have 10 pounds of body fat, they couldn't actually theoretically not lose any weight, right? Let's say they put 10 pounds of muscle on, but they lost 10 pounds of body fat. They still lost body fat. So it's really the reduction of body fat, adiposity.
Which is why we always say don't always pay attention to the scale.
Right.
Right? Because you could be eating healthy, you could be exercising, and you're looking at the scale and saying, I haven't lost a damn thing.
Right. We're gonna talk to the clients today, or the viewers today, Nick. There's two different people we're gonna speak to the rest of this time that we're doing this podcast. We have weight clients, scale clients, and mirror clients.
Right.
If you have 15 pounds or under to lose, you're more of a mirror client, right?
Okay.
I don't care what the scale says. I care what your bikini, your bathing suit, and your naked body does.
Yeah.
Now we have somebody who's, let's say it, Nick, a fat, okay, and they got 70 pounds, 100 pounds. They are a scale client. They're going to lose weight. They're going to lose scale weight.
Yeah.
End of story.
Yeah.
But the goal for everyone is to get to Ripsville and be lean and in an ideal body weight. So the cardio that makes you lose that body fat is also going to let you see a reduction in that LDL. Unless you're got familiar hypercholesterolemia, there could be people that lose 100 pounds and their LDL is just still, off the Richter scale. And these people are unfortunately going to have to think about medications.
Let's shift gears again and talk about foods, because diet is going to play a huge role.
Tremendous.
In all of your cholesterol, all of these markers that we're talking about surrounded by cholesterol. So what are some foods, I guess, starting off with, that we should be avoiding? If you go to you get some blood work done and you realize, my LDL's a little high, my triglycerides are a little high, what should we be on the lookout for to maybe lower, if not totally eliminate from our diet?
Right. And this is going to be, we're probably going to have to flesh this out in several different podcasts, everyone, because there's a lot to uncover here. But let's talk about the things that we can eat that can potentially pull cholesterol out our butt.
Okay.
Okay. And that's going to be high fiber
So
carbohydrates.
these are things that are good for your cholesterol.
Correct.
Okay.
They're going to bind to it, Nick, and pull it out.
Right.
So your body's not absorbing it.
Okay.
You may
Yep.
be ingesting it,
But it passes right through.
but
And
it's binding to it and pulling it out your colon.
okay, great. All right.
So those are going to be vegetables. Okay. It's a fiber that soluble and insoluble fiber in vegetables. Low sugar fruits like berries and cherries, and the pectin that's in apples and pears, very beneficial for most people. And then there's fiber supplements like psyllium husk and glucomannan. These are insoluble, and they have some soluble fiber, and they also too will bind to that cholesterol and pull it out, yielding a lower dietary cholesterol. And then again, to beat a dead horse, we'll go back to the proteins that you're absorbing. Now, I personally, Mike Lynch, I love animal protein, but I do, Nick, as you know, I tend to stick more to plant proteins as I've gotten older, because that is my Achilles heel, cholesterol. And in plant proteins, beans, lentils, I don't really eat tofu. There is no cholesterol. There is no saturated fat. There is no dietary cholesterol. So with those proteins, with plant proteins, you can ingest them. They do have the amino acids that you need, but there's no dietary cholesterol. Good to go. And beans and lentils have more fiber, more insoluble and soluble fiber, pull more of that cholesterol that your body's maybe overmaking and pull it out of your body, right? So
that's a big win. Those are good.
It's a huge win. So if you're eating a lot of fibrous carbohydrates and you're eating plant proteins that have zero dietary cholesterol, now all you're doing is managing pulling out excess cholesterol that your liver is making, okay? Then we have our animal proteins, our chicken, our steak, our turkey, our shrimp, all these things. Now, if you look at that food matrix, Nick, of the animal proteins, things that have a lot of fat, marbling, like you think about a steak that's got a lot of fat in it, that is saturated fat. Saturated fat, even in plant foods like coconut oil and palm oil and even avocado, sorry everybody, has some saturated fat. Saturated fat from the diet is going to be the biggest push as raising that dietary cholesterol. Okay. So when we pick proteins, if you have cholesterol issues, you want to stick to leaner cuts of that protein where it's basically no fat, okay, or very minimal amount of saturated fat. And okay, monounsaturated fats are in meat too, but they don't really raise lipids much. Okay. And then you have the people like myself and 30% of the population that you do have to be mindful of that dietary cholesterol as well. And again, it's a lot for people to actually absorb. There's a lot of layers to this topic. And again, we're probably going to have to we may get questions, and we might have to take little parts of questions and just do specific videos or podcasts on that. But it's going to be, what proteins are you picking? And if you're somebody who really wants to aggressively lower their cholesterol because you're scared of it, your cardiologist has said it, you're like someone like me, that my dad had a heart attack at a very, very young age, and I'm scared of that. That's my one thing that I'm frightened of. And you want to be aggressive, then you're going to go plant protein heavy, and keep that on a low protein on the low end. Take it out completely, or make sure that it's lean. All the fat is trimmed off it.
Okay.
So basically, that from a dietary standpoint, Nick, there's a lot of different angles you can come to it with diet, and that's a great.
And so we want to be watching how much butter we're using. We want to be watching, like you said, the coconut oils.
Yeah.
What are some other like big time culprits here?
One other thing I forgot to mention, Nick, believe it or not, processed carbohydrates can actually raise our cholesterol. Now I can
It's a tough one.
Yeah, I can only speak on a very low level about that. I don't know exactly why they do that. I did can tell you why they raise blood sugar and triglycerides and fasted insulin levels, another topic for another time. But they have a tendency to raise one's lipids as well. So things like white rice and bread and lots of pasta or cakes and cookies. Forget about the fat that's added in them, the bad fats, but just the processing of stripping that carbohydrate of its hull and its fiber and it's just hitting the bloodstream so hard, and that can actually raise somebody's cholesterol as well.
Now, what about fish? We're talking about, salmons and sardines and things like that can be a help.
So though they can to raise the HDL
Oh,
because they still have fats.
right.
So if you're somebody who has high LDL, high ApoB, high lipoprotein little a, there's still cholesterol in those fish. They still have saturated fat. They still have dietary cholesterol. But why people tout those as beneficial, which in some sets they are, is they have omega-3 fatty acids. But for people that are concerned about their lipids, they can get omega-3 fatty acids from plant sources like flaxseed, walnuts. Now, there's some argument if those types of omega-3s are converted well in the body, but somebody can also take an algae because the fish got it from the algae.
Oh,
Isn't that interesting,
that's
right?
interesting.
So these cold water fish, they actually get the omega-3s from the algae. So for vegans or people that are really scared about their LDL, they can get omega-3s if they want to in tablet form from algae. Got no cholesterol. They're not eating anything that comes from an animal. That's where the animal's getting it from. You're cutting out the middleman.
Huh.
Yeah, Nick, I know we're wrapping up with the whole cholesterol thing, but one thing people want to keep in mind for our hardcore dieters and exercise enthusiasts is if they're going to go or if they're going already to get their lipids, their LDL, the HDL, all these markers checked, they want to exercise very light for a day or two because for whatever reason, Nick, high intensity exercise, cardio and strength training can show a false positive on high LDL. Now, they're not exactly sure why this happens. So you obviously have to fast for about 12 hours before you go in for your LDL.
Yeah.
There's some people saying that that's really more indicative of blood sugar. Some people are saying that doesn't even affect it, but most people they want to know all of the markers.
Sure.
So they should be fasted anyway. So a 12-hour fast, and I tell all my clients, don't exercise vigorously. Good exercise, but don't exercise vigorously about 42 to 72 hours before you're going to go and get a blood pull.
Huh.
Yeah. And I don't think anybody knows why, because they've done these studies and it does seem to raise it up a bit. So you wouldn't want to maybe think about medication. I guess we'll say that for Dr. Kumar when she comes, medications, because that's obviously in addition to training and nutrition, that's obviously could be make a major change if somebody does want to entertain that. And we'll talk about with her the pros.
And for a lot of people, that is the right call.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, they're just not going to get to a healthy place with their markers with just lifestyle changes.
Yeah.
And they may need a little help from their doctor and from a pharmaceutical.
Absolutely. Obviously, on this podcast, Nick, we're advocates no matter what we're talking about. If diet, because diet and exercise doesn't save all, but we're advocates of doing everything you can naturally. And if those markers, whatever the marker is, Nick, is whether it's testosterone, LDL, or blood sugar, sometimes the pharmaceuticals can be a matter of life and death. But we're an advocate, and we advocate healthy life, healthy nutrition, healthy sleep, healthy training. Do that for 6 months to a year if the doctor says it's okay. And then at that point, you say, now I have a decision to make if I'm going to add a medication to the mix.
Sure.
So, but we would hate to see somebody go on a medication because they trained hard the day before and raise their LDL because of the hard training.
All right. So, but we do want people to watch those saturated fats. We want people to watch those, the carbohydrates, right? The ultra processed carbohydrates. That's going to be a big deal here.
Get the right carbohydrates in, high in fiber, right? Soluble, insoluble fiber.
And like you said, those plant proteins, they have fiber in them as well. Those are going to be huge for people. Watch the fatty cuts of meat, especially if you're already dealing with a high cholesterol, a high triglyceride. These are things to watch out for. Of course, we should all be strength training. We should all be doing cardio.
Yeah, and I think we forgot something. We forgot about something that I kind of scolded you on before we started this podcast.
Which is?
Cooking oils. Did we talk about this?
We didn't. Let's get into it.
Bang it out quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Nick proudly told me that I think you went to Costco and you got some beef tallow, right?
I did.
Yeah. So listen, there's going to be people that debate with this, Nick. Okay? And those fats, maybe that's why your skin looks so good, But we don't want to seize up your heart, Nick, for great skin, okay?
And maybe I do. I don't know. I mean, I got to look good out there. No, I'm kidding. I will not do that.
But listen, if somebody wants to raise the LDL, which I couldn't imagine why anybody would want to do that. The fastest way to that road would be coconut oil and beef tallow and palm oil and these pure saturated forms of fat, these cooking fats. Yeah. Forget about the adding hundreds of calories that you're trying to burn off through exercise. So you're like the crazy dog in your backyard chasing its own tail. It's like 1 tablespoon of beef tallow probably has like 14 grams of saturated fat and probably has like 20, 30 grams. And it's crowned, right? So if you went like this to it, it'd probably be 120 calories, but it's crowned. And that's 1 tablespoon. And that's 150 calories. So when we looked at your LDL, Nick, right, it was a slightly elevated. Once you take out those things, I'm willing to bet my whole life savings, okay?
You heard it.
That you take out that beef tallow and any of those cooking oils that you like to use, that LDL is going to look like you're actually on a mild statin, and you won't be. And you're going to
So is olive oil?
Unfortunately, well, that's a whole other video for another time, but olive oil does, provided it's even real olive oil, because most olive oils are liars, that they're cut with other stuff.
Sure.
But olive oil does have some saturated fat. So it's a lot better than the
beef tallow.
The beef tallow. Now, here's the thing, though. Most people are using these. This is a whole other video. I'm getting off a totally different topic. But when we talk about cooking, yes, beef tallow and those things are better to cook with because they have a high flash point because they're 100% saturated. So they don't become hydrogenized.
Right, which the olive oil does, right?
And the olive oil does.
Right.
So here's the thing, man. Take the oils out. Take the saturated fat out. You're only going to get leaner. Your abs.
So what do you replace it with? What are you cooking with?
Grill, water, steam, poach, bake.
Okay.
We're going to do a video on this. The easiest pull that everybody in the world can do is cut all these extra fats out. Forget about it's going to raise your testosterone and you need. Most people have plenty of fat. It's right in their fucking ass and their stomach. We don't even need to be adding all these saturated fats to our diet. It's just crazy. It's great for the people that sell it, and maybe they're related to the people in the drug companies. You take our saturated fat and our cooking oils and all that, we'll get you fat as and then my cousin Joey, he's got a statin for you, or a blood pressure medication. It's a beautiful business model.
All right. I learned a lot today. I'm sure everybody at home did as well. I do want to leave people with a call to action, though. And what I want to say to our viewers is if you have not had a lipid panel done in a year or more, it is time. Figure out what's going on. Talk with your primary care physician. Get a referral. Whatever you need to do. get that blood work done and figure out where all these markers are, and then change your lifestyle based on the findings from that blood work.
Yes.
This is really important for people. It's been eye-opening for me. Do not wait for a problem to back you into a corner. Be out ahead of this stuff. And this lipid panel for cholesterol is really important for people.
Yeah. You know, Nick, one thing, because there'll be those people we spoke about way in the beginning of this podcast of saying LDL is not a thing and it's a push to, sell more supplements and drugs. There is a thing real quick, Nick. It's called the knockout gene. Now, most of us, when we're born, we have an LDL of about 30-ish, 30. So the standard is now they have lowered it down to most of us want to be around 100-ish or below. Some people will say 120 is okay or whatever, but when we're born, we have around 30. I trained a woman, it's called the knockout gene, okay? These people in adult age have LDLs around 30, 40 years old. Now, unfortunately, some of these people, they can die as children or whatever. When they cut these people out that have this knockout gene that gives them naturally an LDL of 30, they cut them open and look at their arteries, they're like brand new. So all those people that say LDL doesn't cause heart disease, whatever, it's just one marker. But these people with the knockout gene that have an LDL of 30, when they die, if they donate their bodies or whatever, they cut them open, they could be 60, 70 years old and their arteries they die from something else. Their arteries are wide open. That's a lot. For me, that's all I have to hear.
Yeah.
That's common sense.
Okay.
Now, there's other factors, but yeah, like Nick said, get to your doctor, get these things checked at least once a year. Lipoprotein, little a, your doctor may not know what that is, but still get it tested. It's a one-time test. There's nothing right now that you can do, but you should know whether you have it, if it's elevated or not. ApoB, LDL, if you want to talk about what Nick spoke about earlier, the fractioning of is it large and buoyant or is it these small little BBs? These are all markers that you should know to arm yourself. And look, some of these markers are going to come back in some people. They're going to be scary. But denial is not something
Yeah,
you
just
want
because
to
you
play
don't
with.
know about it doesn't mean it's not happening to you.
Yeah.
You want to be out ahead of this stuff.
Right.
So get that lipid panel. And also, again, if you haven't started, make sure you're doing some strength training every week.
Yep.
Go for a long walk after the biggest meal of the day. That's going to help as well. And we didn't talk about this, but a consistent sleep schedule really can be beneficial to people who are just looking out for their overall health, but especially people who are having cholesterol problems.
Yeah. And if you go to Costco with Nick, take him and yourself and pass the beef towel. Just go right past it. Say, Nick, just keep on going. Go to the paper plates. We're bypassing the beef towel. All right, man.
The more you know. All right. That's all I got. You want to have the last word?
I think that's it, man. I think we gave everybody, get that blood work, exercise, get an ideal body weight, check that blood pressure, check those triglycerides, making sure that you're taking care of everything so you can live a long, healthy life, Nick. That's the name of the game, man.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. That was a great episode. I know I learned a lot today. I'm sure you did as well. Please leave a comment, like the video, share it if you can. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps us. And that's all I got. Have a great day.
And thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Please hit the like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you don't miss any content in the future.